and Lynn, and then was on the bench with Sandy. And as you might imagine, I've learned a lot from all three of them. Lynn Feiger has given so much of her life to create a better world for women, whether lawyers or laypersons, that her receipt of this award is particularly fitting. First, let me tell you a little bit about Lynn. She was raised in Marin County. Her mother was a lawyer. Her father was a psychiatrist. He was an expert witness in the Sirhan trial, for those of you who were around then. She repeated that pattern one time. She was married to a psychiatrist. She went to Brandeis, graduated from UCLA Law School in 1971, and then received a master's in law and society from DU. I came to know Lynn in 1976 when we were leading the charge for women's rights in Colorado. She was one of the first lawyers that joined Lawyers for Colorado's Women, the predecessor to the CWBA. Lawyers for Colorado's Women worked very, very hard to change legislation in Colorado regarding insurance coverage for complications of pregnancy. At that time, they were excluded from health insurance coverage in the same way that suicide and acts of war are. And Beth McCann's here. I remember her testifying before the legislature, and we got the job done. At the time, Lynn was a mother of a 3-year-old boy, and she would bring him to the meetings rather than miss the meeting. And I'll never forget one day when she came into the office and said, "I had a terrible night." I said, "What happened?" "Oh, I took Josh to dinner, and he threw a fit." And some man at the next table said, "Lady, have you ever asked yourself who's in control here?" Way later in life, I adopted children, and I keep that in mind. Who is in control here? When the CWBA was proposed, there was a meeting at our office, and we'd formed a law firm by that time, to discuss whether Lawyers for Colorado's Women would be blended in with the proposed CWBA, and it was. Since that time, Lynn has given incredible time and energy to the Women's Bar and has given many presentations and served on committees. I remember Lynn and I being there at the first convention and the feeling of excitement, like, wow, look at this whole room full of female lawyers. You have no idea how rare that was at that time. In 1977, we started to practice together, and she was from Marin County and I was from Wyoming. I was amazed that she'd become a lawyer because she got married at 19. And I was raised to think if you did that, you're dead. She was amazed because I'd gotten as far as I had with the clothes I wore. One day we were on the bus up and down the mall, and she looked at me and she said, "Do they have real stores in Wyoming?" Anyway, we started practicing together, and we had incredible uphill battles doing employment law. Back then, all the cases were tried to judges, not juries, and some of them were very, very biased. In fact, a law clerk once told us that we lost our case because the judge we had was so biased against sex discrimination cases. The attorney's fees were about non-existent. They were contingent fee basis cases, and there were times when I didn't know how well we paid our employees, but it didn't mean we were always going to get paid. Even though we were winning cases, we won so many cases that there were headlines like this. I don't know if you can all see it, but it says, "Look out, bosses. These women lawyers don't lose sex bias cases." That went out on the AP and was all over the United States. I can't tell you the pile of clippings that I have from that. Opposing counsel never questioned that Lynn meant business. I remember sitting in a conference room with her once, and she was telling these two men how things were going to go, and they're looking at me like, please, help me. Even though he had to put up with people like Ted Barillo, who many of you may not know, but he was a big lawyer. And he took over a case on the defense and said he wanted to meet with us, came to our offices, walks in, and he's got the biggest hand you've ever seen, and he comes over and he goes, hello. He says, how much money were you offered in the last negotiations? And I said, $40,000. Back then, that was huge money. Well, what would you girls do with all that money? We showed him. We won. Lynn received a call in 1976, before we formed our firm, from an Iowa lawyer who was representing a woman with a sexual harassment claim. And at that point, federal trial courts had dismissed those claims out of hand, saying we're not going to entertain flirtations in our courtroom, things like that. Fortunately, the circuit courts have reversed their opinions, and it was time for a case to go to trial. And this lawyer was a friend of the client, and he needed local counsel. So Lynn called me and said, what do you think? And we decided we would love to do a case like that. So we became local counsel. But he forgot to tell us that when we got in the case, the discovery deadline was passed, and he hadn't done any. So I go into federal court, not knowing this, Lynn and I did, and we're going, we just need 6 months to do our discovery, and everybody's looking at us. And Judge Feinsilver finally gave us 6 months to do our discovery, and we got it done. That case was Heelan versus Johns Manville, and it was the first case ever tried in the United States on sexual harassment, and we won it. And this was despite the opposing counsel stomping out of the courtroom. They were overheard saying, well, it was Home Roberts on the other side. HRO did it again. But we won. Lynn has had to have tremendous tenacity and extreme mental fortitude to make it through all the battles she's fought for women. The horrible experiences of some female clients that they suffered were hard to hear. Many needed a great deal of emotional support, and some fell apart and had to be worked with intensively to be able to testify. There have been many times when Lynn has given all her time and energy and made personal sacrifices that many others would not make in order to create a better world for women. She perfected her craft in order to do an amazing job, obtaining excellent results for women throughout the United States and probably farther. The Heelan case got worldwide coverage. In closing, I'd just like to tell you what Charlotte Sweeney's observation was when she nominated Lynn. She said the most valuable lesson she's learned from Lynn was, there are some wrongs that must be fixed. You can sit and wonder about the wrongs and debate how they got there and who created them, or you can simply make it your mission to fix them, period. And once you commit, nobody can stop you.